Also, I think what you're saying is quite important because by meeting or utilizing these tools, you can pick your future, potential future team as well, to get them on board.
Absolutely, that's the whole point.
Building up the relationship. Basically, it's a screening mechanism for good people.
It very much is. Absolutely. Talking to people. One of the mentors in our network that was very helpful to Victor and I when we were starting our fund is one of the most successful entrepreneurs in the United States. His businesses have been in healthcare, but he has started 17 companies that are worth about $22 billion today. And he started all this he had a formula. He started them all the same way. He found a really interesting idea, and then he just began talking to people. He began learning using the web and using his own personal connections. He began talking to experts in the field. He found that everyone was willing to talk to him. And the scientific people would lead him to the business people, and the business people, and then he'd see those areas where people were saying the same thing, and then of course he saw things that were different. And he began building upon what everyone was saying consistently. And that was kind of his model, and it's worked very well for him. Victor and I have used a lot of that in our own, building our own businesses, and it really seems to work. That in these networks, as you begin talking to people and gathering this research, they not only become your future employees, but they become your advisory board members, they become your customers, they become your big advocates, they become your funders, and so it plays multiple roles.
Who was that? Who was that?
His name?
Yeah.
Larry Bach. Larry Bach.
And Greg, don't you agree, on the entrepreneurship level in terms of teams, if an entrepreneur is really good technologically, that doesn't transcend necessarily into business, in terms of the importance of forming a holistic team, in terms of getting a business partner. Some technologists are good at business, but it's not necessarily the case.
Right.
So in terms of the market research, the business guy can see whether the students are good at doing market research or not.
Yeah. The thing is that, so 25 years ago when we started the Connect program in San Diego, there weren't entrepreneurs there. There were a lot of scientists, there weren't a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of inventors. And so the role that we played, the Connect played, was how to make the inventors and scientists better business people. And we started really with a set of conversations, and they're very simple. We call them meet the researcher, meet the entrepreneur. We bring entrepreneurs in and just have a conversation with business people from the community. Service professionals, lawyers, real estate people, accountants, architects. And a couple things we noticed is one, that the networks began developing really strongly, but two is that the technology literacy of the community grew, because when we would listen to an attorney and he would talk about intellectual property and he would talk about patenting and licensing, I became a lot smarter because that wasn't my field. And so everyone became a lot smarter, but because of that knowledge sharing, everyone felt bonded to one another, and you broke down a lot of hierarchies. So that's what part of the success was in terms of getting these inclusive groups together. Yeah.
I would like to add another comment to this whole notion of being a business person. I mean, if you look at Google's success, yes, the two guys took it technically, but the guy that really made it happen is the CEO who sold this and sold it more and more. One of the things that I see happening in all of the businesses worldwide is, you might have the greatest product in the world, but if you cannot sell it, if you don't have the right salespeople, your product will go nothing, it will go nowhere. So sales, to me, is even more important than just the idea itself and the product itself. It's like you said, getting the connections, meeting the people, going out there, getting approvals, get the check. When you get the check, you can develop a product. But if you don't speak with people, if you don't sell your idea, I think, and I've seen one great idea, but the person, especially, in Palestine, there's a lot of people have these great ideas, but sales-wise,
And marketing.
well, yeah, and to me, sales, marketing, business is one, but it's so key and so important. You gotta sell that idea.
So that, I mean, that's a very, very important comment. We were talking about this last night at the Danga meeting. Sales is probably the most important thing because the ability to tell a story, this is like Hollywood, you know, that you have to be able to tell a story. And people buy that story, and they buy your intensity. People buy from other people, so they can see the intensity, the passion, the credibility. They kind of wrap all of those things up in you. You may have the greatest idea, but if people can't see the idea, visualize it, they won't go for it. And so to use programs like Fodaya to help people articulate an opportunity, to help them feel more comfortable being in front of people and discussing their opportunity. Even teaching entrepreneurs, one of the skill sets that's wonderful to teach entrepreneurs in your program here is how to listen. The most important quality of sales is not talking, it's listening. And it's not easy to do. It's a very, very difficult thing to do. And so for many years, for 15 years that I was at Berkshire Hathaway, I ran sales for a lot of the operating companies. I chose to be 100% on commission. I never wanted to be paid a salary because I wanted to earn what I made based on merit. And so that was for 15 years. For 12 to 15 years, I made more than the CEO of the company. And last few years, I made significantly more. In fact, I made what the CEO of the company made. And I remember being scared about that and going in and talking to the CEO and saying, "Doesn't this bother you?" I said, "Not at all." I said, "Because every time I have to write that check to you, that's a confirmation that our bottom line is working, because the way we sold our product is that my commission was baked into the price of the product. Completely transparent." So I was not, there's two kinds of employees within a company: overhead and gross profit margin. And early on, you need to determine which employee is which. And if you have employees who are generating our pure gross profit margin, those are the last people you fire because they have zero burden on the company. And what you ask yourself is, how can I increase what they're doing? How can I motivate them to produce more?
I want to just translate what you said. So we fire the engineers first. We fire the engineers first.
Those who made the idea, those who made the product.
The people that sell the idea is more important than the engineers that made the idea. I know it's against.
Who will support it?
That's once you have a problem.
Well, let him
Not quite
answer.
that. It's not quite that simple.
It's,
It's a very kind of synergistic system. If you think, we often in the United States love to use kind of war analogies. The salespeople are the people on the front line. They're the ones kind of facing the enemy or facing the people in the field. It's the job of the generals, the CEOs, to make sure that they've got enough bullets, that they've got ammunition, that they've got the tools that they need to. That is the role of CEO. And it's the role of the marketing people and the engineers to be provided the technology and the pieces that these guys need to do their jobs. Now, when done well, these people need to be passing intelligence back to the company so that they can constantly be improving. But the danger you can get into with any company is saying that one person is more important than another, because it's a system. It's like saying the heart's more important than the brain. Technically it is, because you could take some parts of someone's brain out, they could still live, but in actuality it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. I'm an engineer, by the way.
Your argument is
The idea has to be sellable itself.
What?
The idea itself has to be sellable, can be sold. Someone, if the idea is not sellable, even if you bring the best marketing people in the world, they will not be able to sell it.
Absolutely. And so for sales, and we can spend some time on sales, but sales is it's kind of like entrepreneurship. People said, well, are good salespeople born that way, or can you teach someone sales? And the answer is, it's a continuum. There's people at the extremes that are just these natural born salespeople. They just they cannot not sell. And I was that way. I actually went to medical school. After college, I went right into medical school right from hated it. Absolutely hated it. Wasn't enough human interaction for me. So I took some time off, traveled, came back. I lived in Japan for a while and had watched the way they did business in Japan. And this is in the 80s. And was fascinated with this whole notion of keiretsu models, which had not been adopted in the United States. And keiretsu models were where they were using in automobile manufacturing, where you'd have a large automobile company, but all the suppliers to it would set up shop very close. And rather than the automobile company having to inventory all the product, these guys would set up shop and would, what's called just in time, they would resupply. And so I came back, and in our family business, we were the largest distributor of military and police uniforms to governments and to the U.S. government and to the U.S. military. But what was odd is that all of our manufacturing was done on the East Coast, so out of the New York area and Pennsylvania and Maryland. But the biggest growing part of our business was on the West Coast. And so every time you placed an order, something had to be shipped across that. And I'm going, that just doesn't make any sense. We want to do something very similar to the keiretsu model. So we set up we were the very first ones to do this. We set up a warehouse where we had all these products, and we would just in time. And what we did is we went into the military and we said, you know what we're going to do is we're going to guarantee 100% of the sale of everything we give you. Rather than you just put it in, and if it doesn't sell, you have to eat it. We're going to guarantee 100% of the sale of everything we sell to you. But in exchange, you're going to give us what's called an open purchase order. You're going to let us just put stuff into the store as we think we can sell it. And you're not going to question it. At the end of the month, we'll reconcile and you'll pay us for what you actually sold. We took our product from a 28% market share to a 72% market share in 5 years. And we grew that part of the business to $250 million in that period of time. Nothing fundamentally different, but it was a sales tactic. You know, yes, there were some logistics that had to be done, but it wasn't that. It was purely a sales tactic. And what we did is we put our people into where we hired salespeople who would be actually in the stores once a week, and they'd restock and they'd do it. But they built the relationship with the customer. And so when they weren't there and a potential customer in the store came up and wanted to buy something, who do you think the salesperson's going to direct them to? What product? They're going to direct them to that because there was a face with that product. So some of the lessons we learned in that, which are relevant here, is having the cheapest product is not always the best strategy. In fact, we were the most expensive product in the market. Not only were we the most expensive product, we had the worst deliveries. We were constantly behind in deliveries. And every time a client would threaten, saying, look, I'm going to go with one of your competitors. They're cheaper, they deliver quicker. What I tell them, but we had the highest quality by far. I said, I can't tell you what to do, but what I will personally promise you is that whenever you do have a problem, I will personally fix it. I will make my guarantee to you that I will personally fix every problem, and I will do it until you're satisfied. And we never lost any business because of that. Because again, there was a trust that was built up. You need to do the same thing with your clients. You cannot just assume that you can put a product out there and it will kind of sell itself or that people will have it. You can never lose sight of the fact that the customer has it. The other thing that's a myth is that we have the saying that the customer is always right. The customer is not always right. Doesn't mean you don't have to listen, but the customer is not always right. You know more about your product than they do. What it's up to is for you to listen to the customer and try to understand what it is that they have a problem with and then try to solve it. That's not necessarily saying that they're wrong. It's just saying they may be misinformed. They may have some personal issues. They may have had a bad day. And so being a good salesperson and being a good sales organization is part psychologist and part psychotherapist as well. Trying to get inside the mind of your customer and understanding what is it they really want. For those of you in relationships, it's not unlike being married and sometimes trying to figure out what your wife's thinking. She's saying one thing and you're like, okay, I didn't do anything wrong, but somehow she's really mad at me. And you sometimes have to figure out what that is.